Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. I realize it's been a little while since I've uploaded a video, but I moved earlier this year, so that kind of sucked all the energy out of the room for the past 6 months or so. So as you can see, we've got a big old box from Ubiquiti here today. And while Ubiquiti has been kind enough to send me products for review in the past, I purchased this with my own money, and Ubiquiti does not know that I'm making this video. So what we're going to be talking about today is the Unifi UPS 2U. Ubiquiti has recently gotten into the UPS market. If you don't know what that stands for uninterruptible power supply. So it's basically a big battery backup, generally used for computer equipment. They have a desktop model they've released, and now they have a rack mount model available. So as with most new sectors that Ubiquiti gets into, I'm anxious to see what they've brought to the table. I might be a little bit of a glutton for punishment because some of their other new product offerings, while they hold a lot of promise, they're missing key features. You know, an example of this would be the EV Station Pro and Lite, which I reviewed last year, and at the time was assured some key missing features would be added, and the reason I haven't created a follow-up video on those is those features are still not available. So why do I need this? I do have a rack here at the house. It's still kind of a mess as I am still settling into the new place. As you can see, I have several battery backups in place. My personal battery backup of choice are Eaton battery backups, and I've got a couple of those. The larger one runs most of the networking equipment. The smaller one is dedicated to my camera system DVR, and the non-rack mount APC is for my Synology NAS. And it has a dedicated one because the Synology NAS, like most NAS, have a UPS port on the back that you can connect to a battery backup, and when the battery reaches a critical point, it will send a signal to the NAS to gracefully shut down. And that brings us to the Unifi UPS. I have had the Unifi UNAS Pro since I think earlier this year. Full disclosure, they did send me this to check out, test, to review. I haven't really gotten as far with that process as I wanted to because of the move and everything else. But one thing that's kept me from completely moving over to this device is there is no USB port on it, and so there is no way to gracefully shut down this NAS in the event of a long power outage. That is until Unifi came out with their own UPS product. And so the way this will work, allegedly, is through Unifi's controller. The UPS will send a signal through the software over the network to the UNAS to shut down properly. So that's definitely one of the things I want to check out here. It's a shame that you have to purchase their own UPS to accomplish this, but here we are. And I'm also interested just in general on the value for the money. This seems to be a really good value for a rack mount UPS. At the time of filming, the price from when ordering directly from Ubiquiti is $279. There's not really much on the market as far as 2U rack mount network connected battery backups. In fact, you know, some of APC's products, if you order the network card, that alone is quite a cost. So I'm curious to see how they've put this together for $279. Hopefully, it's not missing anything too critical as far as features go. But hard to say. Haven't really seen a whole lot of information or videos on this yet. So let's get to unboxing it and see what's included. Now, the one interesting thing is most battery backups, most rack mount 2U battery backups It's all I can do to move them around by myself. This box isn't very heavy, which is interesting. It's only 44 pounds, so it's pretty easy for one person to move around. So let's go ahead and see what's in here. A lot of times with Ubiquiti stuff, they do, to their credit, double box these items. So it may just be a box in a box here. All right, well packed, and yes, it is a box inside of a box, and I like the packaging here. We've got quite a bit of styrofoam to get this here safely, which is good because mine had a nice big gouge in one side, so it looks like it will probably be just fine, even though it had a little bit of a bump in the road on the way here. All right, we've made it to the actual box now, so let's take a look. And again, another good layer of protection. Not sure I've ever had any type of Ubiquiti product arrive damaged. They do very good with packing. Of course, with a heavier product like a UPS, it's even more important. All right, so it does look like we've got the power cord that is hardwired into the back of the UPS, so that is not a removable power cord. It's not entirely uncommon on rack mount UPSs, or any UPS for that matter. Yep, so nice generous power cord here. We have the network rack ears, some sort of paperwork, which is probably just a QR code telling you go check out these instructions here. We've got some rubber feet, I guess, if you were going to set it on a shelf. And then we also have hardware for the rack itself, as well as hardware to attach the ears to the device. And that is it. So somewhat surprisingly, I can't think of any other 2U rack mount UPS that doesn't come with or require rails. However, given the weight of this device or lack thereof, I guess that makes a little bit of sense. Also interesting is the depth of this device. This is less than 12 inches deep, and probably actually some of that is the face plate, so it's probably going to stick out the front if I had to guess. So it's probably closer to 11 inches deep. Now you got to add a little bit for this power cord, but let's just say 12 inches deep, which is very shallow for a 2U rack mountable UPS. So this is a great option if you have a smaller rack. The rack I had at my old house, this would have been really handy because it did not have a lot of depth. So this is a cool setup for something like that. But let's get this out and take a closer look at it. I'm curious. I did read that the batteries are user replaceable, so I'd be curious to see what's in there. All right, here is the front panel of the 2U UPS. Ironically, it's kind of uninteresting. This is an interesting design choice to me because for several years now, one thing that sets Unifi equipment apart, at least the rack mount equipment, are the little 1-inch screens in the front, which I've always kind of been a sucker for. It's neat to be able to just walk up to a piece of equipment and get some information at a glance. If any piece of equipment on a network rack would benefit from that the most, I would argue a UPS would. I mean, that getting some basic information about battery health and load and stuff like that at a glance, to me, is very handy. Both of the Eaton power supplies I have, or UPSs that I have this feature, and I would say, that is an interesting omission by Unifi on this. So it looks like we do have a single status light on the front here, and some venting which is good on both the top and bottom of this front panel. And I'm not seeing any other way to get to the batteries except the front, so let's see if this comes off. It does. So toolless design, I like to see that. So you can see, I'm guessing a intake or exhaust vent here. There's a fan in the back, not sure off the top of my head what direction it's going. So you've got these clever little doodads here, which this snaps into. So this is pretty basic front panel here. Let's see what we can find out in the way of batteries. I'm guessing they're just your average lead acid batteries, and judging by what I'm seeing so far, I'm suspicious that there may only be 2 of them, which would both account for the weight of the unit as well as the price of the unit. Most 2U network rack or rack mountable UPSs that I'm used to dealing with, you're generally going to see 4 batteries at a minimum. So let's take a quick look at that. So 4 Phillips screws, which on one hand is good when you have something heavy to keep it from moving around. On the other hand, I have encountered some clever toolless designs for these. This is something that, you know, if you're on the field and you're needing to get into one, it's nice when you can just pop them out without hunting down a screwdriver, but that's not the end of the world. So this appears to just be a little cover. And so yeah, we've got the batteries in here. Also interesting, this is already connected. Most UPSs that I deal with, you have to connect the power, so that's interesting. I do believe we need to unplug this in order to get a good look at the battery. Comes out pretty easy. And we've got a pretty basic little flimsy battery tray here, which it's probably fine. And again, for the price point, you know, $279 now, you know, at the time of filming, I did have to pay a little bit over $50 in shipping to get it here. So no free shipping, but still, even with the shipping, it's a pretty good price point. So yes, this does appear to be 2 pretty standard lead acid batteries. It looks like this is kind of glued down, which it's not the worst design ever, I guess, but all right, so I'm kind of boogering this all up, but that's fine. Yeah, so a couple MS 9-12 lead acid batteries. These are 12 volts, of course, 9 amp hour batteries. So yeah, that's going to be part of the reason for the cost of this unit and the weight of this unit both being lower is we've only got a couple of them. Probably if I dug around enough on the specs before I impulse bought this, that would have been, you know, not too hard of information to find as far as those specs go, but it does look like they wouldn't be too terribly tough to replace either by just buying raw batteries from wherever that meet this form factor, or by, I'm sure that Ubiquiti at some point will offer just this as a unit, if they don't already, where you can just, where it already has the pigtail, you just slide in a replacement. So be interesting to see the cost on that. And I'm gonna guess that Ubiquiti will probably have a pro version of this, you know, in short order that will have maybe 4 batteries and the screen and all the things. But frankly, with my setup over here, you know, this will basically just be for my UNAS Pro, so I don't really need all that. Although, like I said, I think the screen would have been a nice touch. You know, I would have rather paid $299 and had the little screen than $279 without. But that's just me. So let's get this back together. I do like to see the battery slot is on the front. That's pretty common, but not guaranteed. One reason I prefer the Eaton UPSs is my I just have really, really good life out of the batteries in Eaton's. And my understanding for this from a little bit of research I've done is they have really good BMS or battery management systems compared to like an APC unit, which don't seem to last nearly as long as far as batteries go. So it'll be interesting over time to see how the batteries do in this, see what the battery management is like. So that might be a review or a follow-up review for years, hopefully years down the road. And that just snaps back on. Pretty easy, not mad at it. Let's take a look at the back. So pretty basic stuff. We do have the power cord here. We do have what I presume to be a user replaceable fuse here. Looks like we have a total of 8 outlets, separated. At least on the back, they're separated into a couple different banks. I know on some of the Eatons and APCs, you can group them and whatnot. Don't see anything on here other than 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 as far as labeling goes, and something indicating these are surge protected, which I should hope. Although this one has a little battery port on it, so I'm guessing the top row is battery and surge, and then the bottom row is just surge protection, which is not uncommon on UPSs. Be interesting to see if this works like their PDU does, where you can control individual outlets. That'd be cool. So we've got a cooling fan, obviously. Another interesting design choice that I'm not really sure how I feel about is the power button being on the back. There's both pros and cons to this, in my opinion. The pro is that if you have this deployed in a business where employees have access to the network rack, this can be a plus, because if you have situations where they're having problems and they're trying to do troubleshooting on their own and they know enough to be dangerous and they'd rather do that troubleshooting before they call for support, this can save some grief depending on why they decide to turn off the UPS. On the other hand, it makes it a little more challenging to get to depending on your rack setup. So it looks like we have an Ethernet port here, which is likely the management port for connecting it to the network, a little reset pinhole. And then this is kind of a cool addition here. You have an in and out for surge protection for Ethernet. So that's not something you see every day on UPSs. So that's a pretty interesting design choice. So let's go ahead, now that we've looked at the physical aspects of it, let's go ahead and throw the network ears on this, throw it in the rack, get it, I'm assuming it would need to be adopted into a Unifi controller. So that's something else to consider with one of these, is to take advantage of the network features. Presumably you do have to have a Unifi ecosystem already. Which can be looked at as a con to some degree. You buy an APC or an Eaton, that's not the case. However, their network interfaces are not usually the best, and definitely a little more clunky and harder to get set up for things like alerts, where this is probably going to be a lot more seamless. So pros and cons there for sure. All right, these network ears are quite beefy, as I would expect, since we do not have rails for this. That being said, I have seen some basic 1U UPSs that probably have similar weight and battery capacity with only ears, so not necessarily a bad design decision, just different. And yes, as expected, the depth for inside your rack would actually start at the network ear itself. So if you got a tight rack, it looks like we're looking at right at just a hair under 11 inches to the back. However, if you account for needing some room for the power cord itself, yeah, right at about 12 inches would be pretty snug. Alrighty, we've got it racked. We've got a network cable plugged into it. We've got the UNAS Pro plugged in. So let's see what happens when we power this on and get it adopted and all that kind of stuff. So I'm gonna press this power button on the back. Maybe a press and hold. Yeah, there we go. You need to press that on and hold it for just a split second. Heard some sort of a relay click, and we do have a white light on the front now. And it does look like the UNAS is powering back up, which I had shut down prior to this. So let's get over the laptop and see what we can see. All right, so we do have the UPS showing down here for adoption. So let's go ahead and adopt it. And it looks like the light is flashing between blue and white, like when you update APs or any other Unifi device. So that's consistent with the rest of the platform and what I would expect. All right, looks like we have switched over to just a solid blue light on the UPS. And now it shows that we are online. All right, so we can see our power utilization. It's showing us the battery is charging and at 90%. Get all kinds of other normal networking information over here. And like I said, it does show ports, although I'm not seeing anything that's showing any way to switch them off or what's connected as far as draw, although it is saying enabled. This is all we get on Insights, it looks like, is software updates. Settings. All right, so we have our normal IP settings. Looks like you can set it up as a NUT server so that you can presumably tell non-unified devices to shut down. So this looks to be just your normal Ubiquiti settings over here. Yeah, so if we go over here to the PDU Pro, underneath the Outlets tab, there are options that show how much power is being used by each outlet and options to enable and disable them. So I'm not seeing those options over here. Not that I necessarily expected them, but it is interesting. And it's also kind of interesting, yeah, because we have an enabled and disabled here. The enabled shows gigabit Ethernet too, which is strange. So doing a little more digging from what I can find, at least on the desktop UPS, these ports are unmanaged. It seems a little strange to me that we have enabled and disabled indicators here if they are not at least going to be managed in the future. But I would say this does kind of go along with Ubiquiti's normal MO of releasing the hardware before the software is quite baked. So, you know, the good news is this does seem to be something they could fix in a future software update, assuming the guts inside allow for it. But let's go check out the UDM and see if we now have any way to tell it to shut down. Okay, in case you are struggling with this like I was, I updated the UDM Pro to 4.4.5, and it still did not show the graceful shutdown feature. So then I updated the network to 9.5.21. I think I was on 9.4 point something before. And now when we go over here to the UPS2U, we do have this safe shutdown pairing feature. Doing a little more digging on it, as of the time of filming, the only devices that are compatible for this safe shutdown pairing are the UNAS Pro and the NVR product. So if you don't have those devices, you're not going to see anything here. In my case, I just have the UNAS, so it's only showing that. Hopefully they will add more devices. I mean, at a minimum, they should add any device that could contain a hard drive, like the UDM Pro. And I would say a step beyond that, at a minimum, anything that's a controller, a cloud key or anything like that should also have the feature. Just because if you've been in the Unifi ecosystem for any amount of time, you know that If something in this controller does happen to get shut down improperly, some bad things can happen. Now, of course, like the 2nd gen Cloud Key, it has a battery in it, but it would just be nice to see anything that's got a hard drive and anything that's a controller at a minimum have the safe shutdown feature. I think that really they should have the option of adding any device to this if you want to. But again, this is early days, so probably they'll add more devices as time moves on. Let's go in here and see how this works with the click to pair. Okay, so I do need to enter in my email information for the account owner. And okay, so it's paired. I mean, that's it. So now my understanding is that once the battery gets to a critical level, it will shut it down. I don't really see any settings for that, like what that, it'd be nice, like, well, with my Synology, I can go in there and say, okay, if the battery gets to 5%, then shut it down. Or if it's been on battery for 5 minutes, shut it down. It'd be nice to see the option to define how that works. Let's see, UPS will shut down after 10. Okay, so this tells us how it works. All right, UPS will shut down devices safely after 10 seconds without power. To bring this device back online, use remote power off followed by remote power on in UPS settings. So I'm not really sure I'm crazy about that default setting. I mean, I guess it's the safest thing to do. And so they said remote power off. Okay, so are they saying that basically you have to bring this device back online, use remote power off? Okay, so as of right now, if the power goes out, it's not going to come back on its own. So like with Synology and like any normal USB connected UPS, once the power is restored, the default on most UPSs is just to bring all those devices, to give all those devices power. And when the Synology detects it has power, it'll usually come back up. So with this, they're telling us, well, we'd have to go into the controller, hit power off and power on, manually. So that's a thing. That's it's better than nothing, better than what we had earlier, but it's definitely feels a little half-baked. So again, it's early days with this product, but a 1,000-foot view with products like this, it's not just Unifi, although Unifi or Ubiquiti is a pretty big offender of releasing products before they're fully fleshed out, before the software end is fully baked, and then we get to be beta testers and just wait. It wouldn't be so bad. Well, in my opinion, basic functionality like this should be included inside the box, or out of the box. It wouldn't be so bad if those updates came in a timely fashion. But there's just no guarantees with that. Like I said, I think it's been over a year now. They assured me that some of the big missing features of the EV Station Pro and Lite were like top priority, and I have yet to see even one of them. It'd be cool if they'd given us something, but even one of those or even one of those new features be rolled out. They probably will eventually, but you definitely need to know what you're signing up for when you buy a new a new Unifi product. I'm not shocked. I kind of figured there'd be a little bit of this going on, but at the very least, there is a way to gracefully shut down my UNAS Pro now, which is a big missing piece and a big thing that was keeping me from actually recommending this to clients and actually using it for my day-to-day stuff at the house here. They really need to add the option to define how you want to do that pairing, those pairing settings. Just to only have this 10-second without power thing is a little bit aggressive in my opinion. That battery's there for a reason. I'd like to say, hey, how about you just keep running this UNAS until the battery hits 10% or something of that nature. At least give you the option. So looks like we got a little ways to go. It'll be interesting to see if they add the ability to control these outlets individually. It's not a huge complaint at the price point on that. I wasn't expecting that, but when you do see the outlets numbered and you do see all this separated out and enabled and disabled, or enabled and not powered is what it says, that does imply maybe there's going to be some options down the road, which would be definitely a nice value add for the product. So anyway, that is it for this video on this product. I hope it was helpful. Maybe we'll do a hot follow-up when some more features come out, when and if. I am anxiously awaiting the chance to do some follow-up reviews on the EV Station Pro and Lite. In fact, they, actually after the initial round of updates, they did send me, or after the initial round of videos and some of the problems I had with the Lite, they had me ship the Lite back for some internal testing and sent me a brand new one, and it's still sealed in the box because frankly, I just they have released updates and things, but nothing to address the actual features that my original reviews were about. Until that happens, I'll be holding off on those update videos. But if you're not already subscribed to the channel, I'd appreciate it if you'd consider subscribing so you can see those updates and updates on this product and some of the other stuff we've got in the pipeline. Thanks for watching.